Catch 'em all, Pokemon! Wrong show.
That's a twist. That's very twisty.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Brotherhood of Gaming. I'm William Morris, in case you're new to the channel. Welcome. If you're regular to the show, hey, welcome back. I've always got to welcome the new people. You know how it is. Anyway, I just got back, Gene left. We just got back from seeing Detective Pikachu, the Pokemon movie. Yeah, that one. Wow, what a world we live in now, where comic book movies like the Avengers are ruling the world. Comic book movies based on video games and anime adaptations can now be financially successful. I'm glad we finally made it. And it's very clear right off the bat that Detective Pikachu is apparently doing fantastic at the box office. I know it's only been out, well, maybe it's a little too early to tell. Estimations are that it will be successful. A lot of word has already spread that it's supposed to make like a 50 to 55 million in its opening weekend. Who knows? I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out in a few days. I'm sure you'll hear about it all over Twitter. But you're here to hear what I think about the movie, and I'm gonna do a spoiler and non-spoiler part. First, I'm gonna do the non-spoiler part right here. Don't worry, I will let you know if you haven't seen the movie yet when the time to get out is. First and foremost, I should probably talk about my history with the Pokemon series so that I don't just sound like, oh well, you didn't grow up with it. You don't know what it was like to be back in the 90s. I do, actually. Back in the mid to late 90s, when Pokemon took the world by surprise, it dominated. It had the world by the balls. Every kid was absolutely in love with it. The only people who were not in love with Pokemon were parents, because they had to buy this crap. It was a parent's worst nightmare, because not only did you have video games you had to buy from Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, you had Pokemon cards that kids were getting into. You had the Happy Meal toys with all the plushies and the trading cards. There was so much Pokemon merch coming out the ass. It was incredible. I did play some of the video games. I remember playing and finishing Pokemon Red and loving it when I got my Game Boy Color. I remember moving on to Pokemon Gold, which I did enjoy. And that's where I kind of fell off in terms of the video games. I didn't really return to the video games until about the late Nintendo DS years, when Diamond and Pearl were a thing, and then when the 3DS came out and everybody was talking about Pokemon X and Y and how amazing it was, I tried that one again and I got into it and I was able to finish it. But then I fell off again as soon as like Sun and Moon came out. I tried to play Sun, but I didn't get too far. When it came to Pokemon cards back in the day, they were something I guess you could say I sorta collected, like a whole bunch of other kids at the time, but also like a lot of the other kids at the time, at least the kids that were in my neck of the woods. We collected the trading cards, but nobody knew how to play the actual game. It was just a matter of collecting the cards, and the one card that everybody wanted, and if you had it, you were the coolest kid on the block, was the holographic foil Charizard first edition or whatever it was. Yeah, that's what it was. And if you had that card, you were cool. Every person wanted to be you. Women would line up from blocks just for the chance to suck. Oh, okay, maybe not that much. The thing is about the cartoon is I liked watching it. I never could catch it as it aired because I never knew where it aired. I didn't watch Kids WB or Fox Kids at the time because I didn't know that it was a Saturday morning Channel 5, Channel 6 kind of thing. Nobody told me! But I did follow Ash and his adventures for the most part up until fairly good amount. Well, technically, it's still running. That's my history with the Pokemon series. I do know the original 151. I am well-versed enough with the series. So, my opinions on Detective Pikachu. Non-spoiler version. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was the fantastic, all-hype Pokemon movie that it's kind of being built up to be. But that's not to say that it's a bad movie. It does an adequate job at doing its job of telling a tale. A tale that could technically happen in the Pokemon universe. However, I think there's a better movie in the movie that we got, and that's what's kind of upsetting. because I went into this movie thinking it was going to be like everybody has been saying, or at least as much as the hype has been saying on Twitter, like, oh, it's fantastic, it's already doing amazingly well, and I'm like, whoa, damn, that's unexpected. For a while, I wasn't really hyped to see the movie at all, but then today, all of a sudden, it's like, you know what, I really want to see Detective Pikachu, and now that I've seen it, I'm glad I saw it. I thought it was a decent movie, but yeah, beyond that, without spoiling, it's hard to say, state my reasons, but I'm not fully convinced that this is a world of Pokemon, but a very small area. Because there's a lot of areas that they show in the movie that the main characters travel to. Places where you think you would ordinarily see an abundance of Pokemon or a very specific type of Pokemon running around, like bug types or bird types. And frankly, you don't even see a whole lot of bird types. You see a few, but you don't see a flock of them like you would, say, in our everyday world. Like things that we take for granted. Like you see a flock of crows outside or birds like flying outside. Very rarely do you get that sort of subtlety that there's a lot going on, because there's a lot of times where they're traveling, or even when there's heavy events going on, like things you've seen in the trailer, like when there's cataclysmic events like mountains moving and things, you don't see any other Pokemon in those scenes. It's just the ones that are currently in that scene, like Pikachu. But beyond that, yeah, like Pokemon you would expect to be getting out of dodge or getting out of the way, nothing really there. I imagine that was probably a budget issue, like maybe that would be too much CG to make it look just like the animation or the video game where there's just too much Pokemon everywhere all the time. But unfortunately, that's the world of Pokemon. That's how that reality is. Pokemon are literally everywhere, and sometimes there's too many of the same kind everywhere. Like, you got Zubats all over the place in caves, Diglets all over the place, and yet, if this movie were the video game, I think you'd have a more difficult time catching any of the specific types, except for the common ones that you see in the film. And that was another problem I had, was that it felt like after a while, a lot of the Pokemon that they have in the film start to get very samey. Because I was constantly looking around for new kinds of Pokemon that we hadn't seen yet, and we're actually seeing a lot of the same ones, from Growlithes to Greninjas to the very common ones that, and popular ones, I guess you could say, that we've seen maybe even in Pokemon Go and such. But yeah, there's a lot of common ones that we know are common within the realm of Pokemon that you would expect to see everywhere, and you don't really see them. I mean, you see some Pidgeys every now and then, but you don't see a whole lot of much of anything else. So yeah, I guess I was a little disappointed in that. Like, when every now and then when I'm looking around, it's just more of the same. I mean, don't get me wrong, they do get a good amount of Pokemon in this movie, but there's a lot to be desired. I mean, I don't think we see a Meowth. I don't think we see a... I'm pretty sure we don't see a Diglett anywhere. We see some Growlithes, but I don't think you see an Arcanine. But, you know, for what I got, it's not a bad movie. It's a decent movie. It's a decent attempt at showing a world of Pokemon and adding to the story that we've already heard with Pokemon lore and such. And for it to be done in live action shows that it can be done. That in of itself is not an easy feat to pull off. And the fact that they do pull it off pretty well, and that the characters do kind of look very serious about it, and they believe that, oh, yeah, that all this is very real to them, you can buy it. It's not something where I look at the actors and I feel like they're phoning it in, like, oh, this is such horseshit. No, it does feel like they believe it. The acting is decent, not fantastic. Ryan Reynolds, of course, is really the host of the entire thing as Pikachu, just stealing the entire movie. So yeah, if you are a Pokemon fan, you will like it okay. I dare even say that if you are a really big Pokemon fan, you might... Actually, no, that's a good question. If you are a really diehard big Pokemon fan, this could either be the greatest movie you've ever seen, or this could piss you off in a big bad way, but that'll be up to you. Other than that, I do think it was a good Pokemon movie, and I think that's the goal here, is, did they make a good Pokemon movie? Yes. Did they make the greatest Pokemon movie? No. There's definitely a greater story, a greater threat, a greater plot to be told, and I don't think this was it. It was a good one. It probably, actually, to be fair, I think this whole movie could have been summed up in a single episode of one of the anime's bad guy of the week sort of thing back then. That's pretty much what it feels like. The bad guys were obvious. Nothing was really that much of a twist, except there was one towards the end. I'll save that for the spoiler section. There was one twist towards the end that was kind of good. Still, beyond that, though, everything else was just kind of, it's a good watch. Maybe a one-time. Kids, I think, will love it. If kids are still into Pokemon, they'll probably love it just fine. So, I don't really do rankings and scores or anything like that. I'm not going to give it like, I say it gets a 6 out of 10 stars. No. All I can really tell you is my honest opinion, and you can go from there. If you love the movie, fantastic. I'm glad you did. If you hated the movie, well, I'm sure there's reasons why you do. I think it's a good movie, but I think it's just that, a good movie. I don't think it's fantastic. I think there's a far better Pokemon story to be told, and they definitely can do that with a sequel now that they've established a world and a setup a little bit. I think they could have established the world a little bit more. They sort of do that in the film. There's one part... this isn't really spoilery, but there's a part in the train where, you know how trains usually have like TV screens like on the back of the seats and they show like little documentaries and things? There's a scene in there where they have that going on. It's like, our world is comprised of Pokemon. They kind of give you the Professor Oak beginning where it's just like, our world is comprised of Pokemon and such. These Pokemon have been established and lived all over different regions across the planet. And in this region, which you are going to be focusing on because that's the movie, in this rhyme area, we have a city which is founded by this person, and Pokemon and humans live as one, and there are no Pokemon trainers because there's no need for them here. And so they're giving you exposition about how things work in this movie, and it's fine. So that's the non-spoiler section. It's a good movie, but that's about it. So now we're going to go into the spoiler section where I get knee-deep in criticisms and me talking about what I saw and things that I think could have been done better and things that I thought were really cool. So I'm giving you time now to get out. You can leave a comment below if you want. You can like or dislike this video. I hope you like it. Don't hate me. I'm not going to give you the play-by-play of the whole movie or anything. That'd be pretty boring. I mean, you just saw the movie. Why bother doing that? So we're following the story of... I already forget this kid's name. Wow. Hold on a second. I gotta look up this character's name. Tim. Okay, so Tim is our lead human character. He doesn't have a desire to train or own any Pokemon or be a Pokemon trainer. Apparently those were aspirations that he had when he was really young, probably before he became 10 years old. Then he would have gone off and did his Pokemon training thing. But something happened in his life. He lost his... he lost his mother, and his father became too invested in his work. He liked living with his grandmother, and he kind of just lost all interest in being a Pokemon anything, or having anything to do with them, really. And everybody else kind of thinks he's an oddball, because it's kind of well known that humans and Pokemon generally go hand in hand. You can't not have a Pokemon. It's like people with cell phones these days. I mean, it's like, you're not normal if you don't have a cell phone. I know that probably hit my friend George it's like, well, I guess I'm one of those oddballs. But yeah, okay, anyway, so eventually it's learned right away that Tim's father is considered dead. He goes to his father's house, and then that's where the movie begins, with Pikachu coming into the scene. I think the CG with the Pokemon is okay most of the time. So like, there are a few times when it does look a little too fake. I don't know. I don't think they could have did it any differently. Otherwise, you might have ended up with Sonic the Hedgehog the movie. And you change it too much, and it just looks nothing like it should. So they probably did the best they could by staying as faithful to the look of the Pokemon characters without changing their proportions and looks too much. But they did have to give them that fuzz, because that's just naturally what animals should have. There are no animals in the movie at all, aside from Pokemon, which is really good. They are trying to stick to their lore. Speaking of lore, one of my biggest questions going in was, is this movie a standalone, or is it connected to the rest of the series at all? Or is it an Elseworld tale just with Pokemon? Now, the movie plays with that, and it likes to drop hints that it's connected to the previous Pokemon stories. And by that, I mean it's connected with potentially Red from Pokemon Origins and Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, and or it's connected with the Pokemon story with Ash Ketchum and all of his friends and his adventures. And the reason being is because Mewtwo is in the movie. And if you know anything about Mewtwo, you know that he's created. He's not naturally born a Pokemon. He was created in a science lab. And 20 years ago or so, at least in Pokemon timeline, Giovanni, who used to be the leader of Team Rocket, was the one who founded the organization and the science division that created Mewtwo off of the DNA of Mew, which is like one of the rarest Pokemon out there, like rarely documented. In Giovanni's laboratory, Mewtwo destroyed it, escaped, and then went on to have 20 years worth of lore behind him.
These humans, they care nothing for me.
Congratulations.
Am I just an experiment? A laboratory specimen? This cannot be my destiny.
Now, in this movie, Mewtwo gets recaptured, and then there's a moment where, like, our main characters, they activate a computer where it brings up a holographic image, flashback, talking about how Mewtwo was recaptured, saying that, oh, this is the same Mewtwo that broke out of the Kanto region 20 years ago. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, they're connecting it, because that's exactly what happened in the Pokemon first movie. He broke out of the science area and destroyed it. And what's funny is I looked it up just to confirm it. Pokemon, the first movie where that event happens, came out in 1999, 20 years ago. So I was sitting there like, oh, they're connecting it. This is a sequel. This is not a standalone story, or at least it's trying to link it all together. Now, another part in this movie that I thought was interesting, and now if you saw my non-spoiler section at the beginning, this is where I thought the movie was probably going to be better than it was when our main characters go to the main CEO, the villain of the movie. When they go to his office at the top of the tower, the first thing you notice are the big statues in the background, and the statues of are Palkia, Dialga. Off to the side are Palkia and Dialga. And in the dead center in the back, you see Arceus, the god of all Pokemon. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, wow, they're going that far with it. They got Arceus, like an Arceus statue. This is gonna be good. like we're gonna get knee deep into some real Pokemon action if they're referencing the legendaries. And there was even oh my gosh, I forgot where it was. I think there was somewhere in the movie there was a poster in the background where it said, like, what was it? It was some Pokemon versus Articuno, which, if you know your Pokemon, the Articuno is the legendary ice bird from the original games. I'm like, oh wow, they're referencing Articuno, they're referencing legendaries. Aside from Mewtwo, I don't think there's a single legendary in this film. I don't think you even see Mew. And that was just kind of disappointing. And it goes back to what I said earlier about how it feels like they did pick and choose a lot of Pokemon from the lore to put in the movie, but it feels like we just see a lot of those Pokemon and not much variety. Except for those scenes where they're trying to be grand and epic. You get like that scene where Charizard and Pikachu are fighting, and all hell breaks loose, and it's like, we'll use this Magikarp because Magikarp can turn into Gyarados. It does turn into the Gyarados, but at no other point do you see a Gyarados or any other water Pokemon when they're on the lakes, when they're in forest regions or forest areas. You don't see any of the Caterpies, you don't see any Weedles, you don't see any of the bug kind of Pokemon that you'd think would be running rampant all over those places. You do see the Bulbasaurs, but that's all you see are just Bulbasaurs. You do see some, like, well, okay, to say you don't see any bug Pokemon, that's not true. There were some, I don't know what these Pokemon were, these are definitely from, like, the later gens. There were some, like, wormish type Pokemon that were in you don't even really get a good look at them because, like, the blurred vision, because they're focusing on the background characters, but in the foreground you can see, like, there's sort of like bug Pokemon, definitely not recognizable ones for a second. And you see, like, some mushroom type Pokemon. But again, later gen, I don't know which ones those are. But yeah, I don't think you see a whole lot of them. And when they escape the wrecked laboratory, and then all hell breaks loose and the mountains are moving because the Pokemon, like the garden is literally a like giant Pokemon, and they're moving and they're colliding and the mountains are crushing and moving. Do you see any other Pokemon in there at all besides Psyduck and Pikachu, who are currently with our two characters? At all? Like, do you see any birds trying to fly out of the way? Any sparrows? Any pharaohs? Any Pidgeys, Pidgeotos, Pidgeots? Any other bird types trying to get out of dodge? Bug types trying to get out of the way? Weedles or Zubats or Diglets that live underground and they're like, oh god, the earth is shaking, let's dig and get out of here. Or that would have been an interesting scene right there. Like, before the mountains start to move, they see like a bunch of Diglets and they start Digleting their way out of the way. Like, oh wow, those Diglets are certainly moving fast and getting out here. In fact, I see a lot of these Pokemon birds, like, they seem to be leaving too. Like, are they sensing something? Is something about to happen? Whoa! And then it starts moving. Yeah, and that's where my suspension of disbelief that we are living in a world of Pokemon is kind of because we're looking at a wilderness that they're walking around just to get to this laboratory, and there's not a lot of Pokemon or activity going on. Again, that might have been a budgeting issue. Like, maybe they didn't have money to create that much of an elaborate world. They're just trying to, like, just go with it. The beginning of the movie was kind of okay with trying to set that up, like how it does, like, a panning shot. Like, oh, look, here's some Pidgeys flying. Oh, look, there's some Taroses running in the field. Here's a Cubone in the wild. Hey, here, go catch it. Oh, that was another thing. You don't really see any Pokeballs in this movie outside from the opening scene. And I know they kind of set up that, okay, we're in Rhyme City, which I don't know if that's a city from a game, but it's a city that we have no need for Pokemon trainers here. Like, there's no need for Pokeballs because Pokemon and humans live side by side as one. It's kind of like Digimon. There's no need for trainers to have Pokeballs, which I find a little hard to believe. I'm like, I don't know. I think any person who owns a Pokemon traditionally also has that Pokemon's Pokeball to suggest that, yeah, I'm the owner of this Pokemon. It's mine. You can't take another trainer's Pokemon, you know? So, and especially during the climax of the film when the female reporter, she's yelling at everybody like, don't let your Pokemon breathe the gas! Don't let your Pokemon breathe the gas! I'm sitting there thinking, how are you supposed to stop them from breathing the gas other than just making them hold their breath? As far as we've been able to tell, there are no Pokeballs in this movie aside from the beginning scene. I don't see anybody like pulling out their Pokeballs like, don't let your Pokemon breathe the gas! Oh shit, alright, Caterpie, return! Like, none of the Pokemon trainers or Pokemon owners are pulling out their Pokeballs to try to make the Pokemon return for safety. They're just all out in the open. So yeah, like, it was those little things that I guess you could say are nitpicks, but maybe it's because I'm too spoiled by the actual lore and world of Pokemon to be like, this doesn't feel right, I don't buy that. But I guess if you're a casual Pokemon goer, which, to be fair, I think I should be a casual, I definitely don't consider myself a hardcore fan, but I know enough about it to know that, something about this doesn't seem right. But yeah, again, they set up a lot of things that a lot of those Easter eggs that I think could have led to a better Pokemon movie, especially during the climax when you see Mewtwo going crazy. How appropriate would it have been, like, during that climax to, like, see some characters that we knew from the original series. I mean, yeah, we know it's 20 years later, but it's not like the characters that we knew 20 years ago are going to be super old now, because you got to remember, Ash Ketchum and all the Pokemon trainers like him are like age 10 through 13 when they start their Pokemon journey. Traditionally, age 10 is when they start a journey. So if you want to say Ash and his friends, they were on their adventure when Ash was 10 years old, and Pokemon the first movie where Mewtwo happens, he's still 10 years old. 20 years later, okay, so he's 30 now. Like, have Ash or Red or somebody show up, and yeah, they're 30 years old, but they're still badass Pokemon trainers. They still can pull out a Charizard, they still can pull out a Pikachu or an Ivysaur, Venusaur, Blastoise, and just start wrecking bad guy shit. That would have been an amazing... And it would have been appropriate because it's Mewtwo. A Pokemon not commonly seen. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Mewtwo kind of have this thing where he likes to live in isolation because, like with the other clones or engineered Pokemon, because he feels like they don't technically have a place in civilization. They just want to live out their lives in peace without any interference with the humans. Like, wouldn't it be technically appropriate, like, if Mewtwo's on TV screen wreaking havoc because he's psychologically connected to this other guy, that the Pokemon trainers that we know from back in the day, Brock, Misty, Ash, or Red, or Gold, might show up and be like, oh my god, it's Mewtwo from, like, well, I can't just let this go. I gotta look into this. Like, just those simple Easter eggs. Like, bring in some people that we know. Bring in Officer Jenny. Bring in Nurse Joy. There's no Pokemon centers in this movie either. So if you want me to believe that this is a world of Pokemon, don't immediately dismiss some of that lore stuff by bringing us to a brand new city where the rules of Pokemon have changed. We don't need Pokemon trainers here. We don't need Pokemon centers or Pokemon marts. We don't have Pokeballs here because our city is different for some reason. Because we need the plot of this movie to make sense. Okay, now going into the twist that I really liked. The CEO and his son appear to not be on the same page. Like, they don't like each other. They're fighting a lot. The CEO is the one that made the city like as successful as it is. He made it so that the Pokemon and the humans can live side by side. But also, it looks as though that there's this drug that is called something, but it has an R in its name. And when they called it like something R, I was just like, is that a reference to Team Rocket? You'd think, but sadly, no. Another missed opportunity there. Yeah, there's not even a reference to Team Rocket. Like, sure, I know that Team Rocket was technically disbanded a long time ago, but it would have been nice to have a reference in there. But the twist towards the end is that there's a Ditto that can transform not only into other Pokemon, but it can transform into humans as well. And conveniently, when it transforms into humans, it always transforms into humans that are wearing sunglasses so that it hides its beady little eyes. And I'm just like, oh, that is so clever. Because, yeah, there's a point early on in the film where you see a Ditto hanging around the old man, but you just kind of think, oh, that's kind of cute. But it was supposed to serve as, I think, maybe a subtle hint that, oh, well, maybe not everything is as it seems. And no, it turns out that this Ditto has been disguising itself as people and working for the bad guy the entire time! That was kind of clever, and it was pretty well done. So, kudos for something I didn't see coming. So yeah, beyond that, I guess there's not too much else to really talk about. I do think that if you're gonna show off legendary Pokemon in the background, like Articuno or Palkia, Dialga, or Arceus, like, you gotta give us something, man. Show us the legendaries. Show us that they're out there somewhere. Give us a little bit more of a taste. Don't just, like, put them as statues in the background and call it a day. As far as action goes, I don't think there were a lot of real good battles. You get that one fight with the Charizard and the Pikachu, but that doesn't really go anywhere. And before that, you get a little bit of a fight with Charizard and Gengar. But you don't really see any traditional Pokemon battles. And I think that would have been great for the climax of the film to finally have, like, the villain throw out his Pokemon and Tim could have had his Pikachu and they could have been throwing out orders, doing like a traditional Pokemon fight. That I think would have been really cool, and sadly you don't really get that. So yeah, I just think this movie's got a lot of missed opportunities. It could be rectified if they decide to do a sequel, but if they do decide to do a sequel, it's definitely not going to be called, like, Detective Pikachu 2. It's because, as you know, Detective Pikachu is no longer here by the end of the movie. It turns out that Ryan Reynolds was the father the entire time, and he's now inside the Pikachu because Mewtwo willed it so. And for some reason, Mewtwo decides that, oh, I'm only going to undo this spell once the sun comes into the picture for some reason. Like, I don't know why that's a thing. That kind of raised an eyebrow, like, why does the sun have to be there for him to separate Pikachu and Ryan Reynolds so that he can be his own person again? Like, why is that a thing? So yeah, like, little things like that are just kind of like, huh, that's weird. But beyond that, it was a decent movie. It definitely not all that I hoped it would be. I can't speak for everybody, but at the end of the day, I'm surprised that they somehow managed to make this work at all. So you know what? Go check it out. I think it's a decent attempt and a decent action flick, and it's pretty funny. It's got some humorous moments. Like, if you like Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds does a very credible job. There's no Deadpool cursing or anything. But there are some funny parts. So if you're looking for a comedy, you'll probably be satisfied all right. If you're looking for an action film, that's definitely not akin to Marvel's Endgame, but decent on its own, you'll probably be just as satisfied. I mean, I'm just shocked that somehow this movie happened. So, there you guys have it. Those are my thoughts on Detective Pikachu. A marvel that this movie even exists. It's not that bad. It's pretty good. I think that there's a better Pokemon movie that can be done and built from this. But only time will tell if we get that. Until then, I was satisfied. Let me know what you guys thought. I'll be looking forward to your comments below, and we'll see what happens in the near future. Until then, okay, bye.
Hey there everyone, did you like this video? If you did, why not give us a thumbs up and maybe leave a comment and watch some more of our stuff? Also, if you really want to keep up with the Brotherhood of Gaming, such as myself, William Morris, or Eugene, you should really follow us on our Twitters, links provided below, so you can see what's coming up in the future. And since, we have to play these games sometimes and record them, why not join us on our Twitch page where you can hang out with all of us as we do so and chit-chat about the games that we love so much. Lastly, if you want to help keep our dreams alive, you can support us in any number of ways, either by continuing to view our videos, like them, share them with all your friends and family and your peeps and your girlfriends, or you can also join our small Patreon and throw all your spare cash away. We'll even give you a shout out. Once again, thank you all, and have a wonderful day.